Are Naruto's Chunin exams as great as we remember? Today that's the question I'm hoping to answer by going through this entire arc, dissecting it, and talking about all the things that I feel are worth talking about. Of course, I've already discussed the earlier parts of Naruto in another video, so if you haven't seen that one already, hey, you can check that one out before watching this one. Let's jump into it. There will be spoilers. You've heard of Bluebird, but have you heard of Scentbird? That's where we're at for segues today, folks. That's the best it's getting. Now, Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service of sorts. With it, you can take a quiz, browse their website, and pick out the scents that you want to choose, and have them delivered directly to your door. So with this, you're getting to test out top-of-the-line fragrances for a low price, and that low price is just $16 for a vial. And this isn't some small dinky vial, this is a full 30-day supply. For example, this month Scentbird sent me Paper Plus, Milk Plus, and Get a Room. My favorite of the bunch was probably Milk Plus, which smelled a bit like marshmallows around a campfire, had a little vanilla hint to it. If you want to know anything else about any of the fragrances I got though, another cool thing is that each one has its own link, which will tell you details about what it's made of, its scent profile, and that sort of stuff that will help you make an informed purchase. Now, Scentbird is only available in the US and Canada, but if you live in either of those places, you can use my code to get 55% off your first month. That's $7 for one 30-day vial. So try something new and smell extra fresh. But without further ado, we're about to talk about something fresh with Naruto's Chunin exam. First and foremost, the Chunin exams function to significantly expand the world of Naruto. We learn about treaties between villages, the political importance of the exam, and the true renown of the Uchiha clan. Beyond that, the series' larger conflicts are coming into focus, with the likes of Orochimaru and Kabuko. Additionally, as all these unique powers are introduced, it's obvious that this is basically a superhero story dressed in ninja clothes, which I'm not complaining about. This section has some awesome fights, and though I don't really have much to say about a lot of them, they're still really cool and fun and hell yeah! All in all, we're past a prologue focused on basic character introductions and world building, and Naruto's big boy plot is kicking into gear. Now it's time for things to heat up. Of course, this means that many minor characters are introduced and expanded upon. There's the likes of Kiba, Shino, Tamari, Kankuro, and I could go on for quite some time. While most characters tie into the larger themes of this section to some degree, there are some standouts. So what are these themes? Well, the first one can basically be boiled down to don't judge a book by its cover. Let's start with Shikamaru. In contrast to Naruto, he seems lazy, disinterested, and unmotivated. Like a guy who won't amount to much of anything. In fact, it's kinda hard to tell why he's even doing this ninja stuff in the first place. However, during the first set of individual fights, there's another side to Shikamaru. Unlike others who get caught up in these adrenaline-pumping matches, he remains calm. As such, he's able to clearly assess the battles and recognize that Tamari will beat Tenten. Even more importantly though, he's able to keep his cool during his own match and come out on top using his intelligence. However, when Tamari learns she'll be facing him in the next round, she isn't remotely worried. On top of that, the crowd barely even wants to see their match, throwing junk as they demand to see Sasuke instead. So Shikamaru is still being underestimated and misjudged. But during the match, it becomes incredibly obvious that Shikamaru is truly special. He manages to back Tamari into a corner despite the fact that she's way stronger than him. Then, using his girthy IQ, he discerns that he won't be able to beat her, and that he's going to run out of chakra. So he forfeits the match. At first this might seem defeatist, but the older ninjas recognize wisdom in his decision. With that attitude, he'll be unlikely to rush headlong into danger, and he'll understand if a situation is hopeless and if a mission should be abandoned. Somehow this kid who seemed relatively weak, who left so little of an impression early in the arc, has turned into the strongest contender to become a Chunin. This way, everyone who judged Shikamaru based on first impressions, including many readers and viewers, are forced to confront the fact that they were wrong. Don't judge a book by its cover. But there's another theme closely tied to this one. After all, when people surrounding you have come to a determination about your abilities or personality, it's easy to adopt that opinion of yourself too. In other words, if enough people tell you that you're hopeless or inept, you're liable to start feeling like you actually are, regardless of the truth in that statement. I'm sure some of you don't feel that way, but it takes a strong will and a whole lot of confidence to go against the flow of societal consensus. That's a pretty rare trait to have. Still, that's exactly what so much of this section of Naruto is all about. In particular, Hinata embodies this theme exceptionally well. See, she's been repeatedly misunderstood and mistreated by others. Her own father abandoned her at a young age due to her lack of talent. She was quickly replaced by her sister and sent out to become a ninja. Her father saw her as nothing more than a burden, a weakling who could never contribute to the family. So Hinata saw herself that way too. And during her fight with Neji, he parrots her past feelings back at her. People cannot change. A failure is a failure. Your personality and power will stay the same. And though she loses the fight, she manages to win in a way Neji hasn't. She fights back against her supposed fate and changes by believing herself and refusing to give up. She has the strength to go against the flow that Neji, with all his ability and genius, has failed to find within himself. Beyond that, Hinata's experiences of being underestimated have helped her understand Naruto in a way no one else has. Because she saw him working hard, saw him trying to get better, saw his refusal to give up, saw that if she could be a bit more like him, she would be better for it. Without knowing it, Naruto's attitude and actions, which to him likely felt futile for so long, were already making waves in the world around him. But there's someone else in this arc who's been underestimated. Rock Lee. The man. I love this guy. At first, he seems like a weak weirdo who's a bit too close to his teacher, and when he demands to fight Sasuke, it seems like that probably won't go so well. However, then he gets going and, well, he's got a whole lot more power than the gang expected. To make matters even stranger though, he's stronger than Sasuke despite a massive limitation. He can only use taijutsu, a fighting technique that relies on physical ability, rather than any of the series' typical fancy ninjutsu or genjutsu or whatever jutsu you want to call them. Rock Lee has simply worked harder than Sasuke and managed to surpass him through that alone. Here we have another extension of the previous themes, hard work versus talent. After all, Shikamaru and Hinata were largely looked down upon due to her perceived lack of skill or talent. And the same can definitely be said for Rock Lee, but he's specifically made it his goal to prove that, through hard work alone, you can overcome even the most brilliant of geniuses. Needless to say, this means that he works tirelessly, day in and day out, using any moment he can, any opportunity to train. And he'll train until his body collapses, until he's battered and bleeding from all his hard work. This way, his fight with Gaara immediately poses a question. Can hard work alone truly overcome talent? Because though little about Gaara is understood at this point, he clearly has some crazy abilities. In fact, he has abilities that, at first, seem like they'd be a really strong counter to Lee, with his sand shield and barriers that block physical attacks. Even after Lee removes his training weights, which yes, is peak fiction, I won't hear any arguments otherwise, he still has a ton of trouble dealing damage. So, in the end, Lee has to push himself to his absolute limits. He opens 5 of the gates in his chakra system, temporarily giving himself incredible abilities that come at a cost. Immense strain on his body. What I expected from this moment was a success, a message that hard work will triumph. But instead, no. Even after all that, he still loses and walks away from the match with a broken body. The doctors even tell him he'll never be able to be a ninja again. It's an incredibly sad moment, especially considering that Guy only taught him these techniques because he so thoroughly believed in him and he so badly wanted him to succeed. And yet, teaching him that may have been a big part of what led to his downfall. Overall, it's clear that Lee made a mistake here. The mistake of rushing. Yes, he worked incredibly hard. He probably had more patience than most even, but he didn't have enough. He lacked Shikamaru's ability to recognize when it's time to call it quits. If he had been willing to stand down this time, he could have come back stronger later. Now though, well, now it's hard to know what will happen to him. As Kakashi says, you can't act without limits. And that's because this is what can happen to you if you do. However, does this mean that you can't beat a genius through effort alone? Well, Naruto's journey in this arc attempts to provide an answer to that question. On top of that though, his arc also ties into the other themes we've discussed. First off, judging a book by its cover. Though it's obvious that Naruto has been frequently misjudged by others based on hearsay or first impressions, the arc has other ways of building on this idea. In particular, there's the written portion of the exam. Here, the proctor gives them a written test of 10 questions, with a rule set that encourages and, for some, even necessitates cheating. Most importantly, if you fail to answer at least one question correctly, you fail, along with the other members of your squad. However, there's another twist. After 45 minutes, the test's final question will be revealed. But it's here that the proctor raises the stakes. If you answer the question incorrectly, you will fail this Chunin exam and never be allowed to apply again. But before they hear it, they have an option. They can give up and come back another year. Here there are multiple layers of deception, where the students are led to have an incorrect assumption of what the test is all about. First, it seems like a normal test, but beneath that is the actual objective of seeing whether these kids can keep their cool and cheat without being noticed. Beneath that, though, there's this final question that nullifies the importance of all past questions and makes it seem like it's better to give up than possibly fail. Then beneath that, there's the truth of the matter. There is no final question, and agreeing to answer it is the only actual requirement to pass. The whole test was a ruse, meant to get people nervous and scared. Don't judge a book by its cover. However, though Naruto is able to pierce through this deception, he's far from perfect in this regard. Just like others have underestimated him, he underestimates those around him. After all, when he gives us his impressions of others, he calls Shikamaru lazy, Hinata a weird, gloomy, shy girl, Kiba annoying, and so on. Basically, it feels like he's writing them off and assuming they aren't that important, boiling down all of who they are into a basic catchphrase. Of course, though, he slowly realizes how wrong he was. That Shikamaru is brilliant, that Hinata is incredibly motivated, that Kiba may have been wrong to so thoroughly underestimate him, but he still has strength and determination that almost leads to his defeat, and, well, you get the picture. Later, with Jiraiya, he has no clue that this guy will be able to take his training to the next level, that he's a legendary ninja who could very well be the next Hokage if he wanted. He's realizing that he's not immune to making these mistakes too. As far as Naruto himself being underestimated is concerned, we get a big payoff here. After all, when he's fighting Neji in the individual battles, with this massive crowd watching, most people are quick to write him off. There's no way he could beat Neji. He's so nobody. But then he does, and the crowd cheers, and Naruto gets a taste of that acceptance he's longed for. So, all these chapters later, after a ton of hard work, Naruto is making headway on one of his ultimate goals. He's managed to break free from others' judgment and even change their opinions of him. Finally, when Naruto goes up against Neji, Naruto is able to fight against fate and defeat him. But what does fate mean in this case? Well, I think it has to do with what others expect of you and going against that flow, the same way Hinata is trying to. Defying destiny is seeing a situation from a different angle and proving that there's legitimacy in that view, no matter how much others tell you you're wrong. Of course, this isn't actually fate, it's more of a societal consensus than anything else, but that pressure can feel like fate, and it definitely feels that way to Neji. So where others see 9 tails as some terrible curse, where Naruto himself saw it that way for so long, now he's starting to see it as something different, something better. An advantage, a pool of chakra he can pull from that will give him the upper hand in battle. He's turned his cursed fate into a gift, and in doing so, has expanded Neji's worldview and set him on the path toward understanding and freedom. It's probably clear by now, but I really like everything I've discussed so far. It's all great. We've gotten some of the highest highs in the whole story. Some of the most exciting, fun moments we're ever gonna get in this series. But then a problem comes to the surface with the last part of these themes. Hard work versus talent. Can a supposed failure defeat a genius through hard work alone? Well, Naruto vs. Neji is clearly meant to be a climactic, thematic end to this arc that addresses that, with Naruto standing in for hard work, and Neji standing in for talent. Now, Naruto has clearly worked hard. At least in part, he's proved his prowess and abilities. However, he did not reach this point through hard work alone. Instead, he only manages to defeat Neji via hard work and talent. And it's not some small dose of talent, it's the 9 tails' massive pool of chakra. Something only he has. But the narrative frames this like his talent and unique abilities didn't have anything to do with it. That's not why he won. After all, what does he say to Neji after he wins using his shadow clones? Clones were my worst jutsu. The implication? Well, that he managed to improve this jutsu through hard work, but that just isn't the case. He's only able to use this many shadow clones because of his abnormally large amounts of chakra, because of an advantage he has that others do not. That was the reason why he was able to so quickly use this forbidden jutsu. Not because he studied it thoroughly or practiced it endlessly or something like that. No, he just happens to have the 9 tails as chakra. And that's fine. That's cool. I have no issues with that. But Naruto absolutely is not the same as Lee, regardless of how much the story tries to draw connections between them and have us believe that Naruto's success is, in some way, a success for Lee's position as well. The failure did not defeat the genius through hard work alone. Of course, I'm not claiming that Naruto is all about this hard work versus talent thing. There's plenty more stuff to the series and plenty of themes it follows up on well. I already discussed a bunch of them, but I still believe that this is a component of this arc and that it's fairly mishandled. It doesn't help that the plot starts getting real funky during this Neji fight too. See, this is where we get Neji's tragic backstory and learn the details about the Hyuga clan's branch family versus head family shenanigans. The most important details are those surrounding the death of Neji's father. So, let's go through that. Okay, so there's some sort of treaty between the Land of Lightning and the Land of Fire. However, some lightning ninjas swooped in one day and tried to kidnap Hinata to get her Byakugan. But Hinata's father stopped them, killing that ninja in the process. After that, the Land of Lightning denied any wrongdoing, claiming that their ninja came in peace and was wrongfully murdered. As such, they wanted to make a deal. They won't go to war if they get Hinata's dad's dead body. So Neji's dad is disguised as Hinata's dad and sacrificed to maintain this treaty. The most obvious complaint I have stems from just how silly this whole situation is. Like, sure, these lightning guys are denying it, but come on. Could you really keep a treaty going with a group that would do something like this? It seems like a good sign that this isn't going to last.
However, people make mistakes, and the third Hokage is willing to sacrifice a lot to maintain even a tenuous peace between nations. Making mistakes is not a bad plot make, at least not alone. But what about Hinata's dad? As far as we see, he isn't in hiding or anything. He's just out and about doing his thing. Wouldn't the people from the Land of Lightning see him alive and go, hey, they didn't honor our deal? This only would have worked if Hinata's dad was kept alive in secret. Otherwise, what's even the point of doing this whole plan and killing Neji's dad as well? And then there's the next stupid thing. See, Neji's dad wasn't actually killed against his will. No, he willingly sacrificed himself and even viewed this as the one choice he really got to make for himself. He also wanted Neji to know he did this and wrote a note for him telling him exactly what had happened. And yet no one gave it to Neji until now? Until after he lived with this pain for all these years? Until after he nearly killed Hinata? Why? Was Hinata's dad too embarrassed to tell him? Maybe. I don't know. But the narrative doesn't really clue us in, so I'm not too interested in trying to untangle this myself by making excuses for the story. Maybe I'm missing some details, but I've tried to look up explanations for this mess of a plot and I've reread it multiple times, and I've never found something remotely satisfactory. It's such a shame, too. Neji's backstory reveal could have been great, but tragedy doesn't land when it feels forced and nonsensical. Then it's just cheap. Unfortunately, though, I've got another big problem. One that I skimmed over before. Sakura, or more specifically, how she's handled. Where characters like Lee, Naruto, Neji, Hinata, and Shikamaru get some good developments, Sakura gets, well, stuff that really annoys me. Her first big moment comes in the Forest of Death. Now, she does try to do some stuff here, and despite getting bailed out by other characters, she is trying her best and getting a moment to actually do something and protect her friends. This culminates in her cutting her hair, which is framed as a big deal. The reason? Well, she grew out her hair because she heard Sasuke likes girls with long hair. On its own, this moment is fine. In fact, it could represent something really cool. Maybe Sakura is moving past defining herself through this obsession with Sasuke. I mean, in her own mind, she just made herself less appealing to him so she would have a better time fighting. However, the story doesn't follow up on this in a satisfying manner. Instead, we get Sakura's fight with Ino, where we learn more about how they were friends in the past. Some parts of these scenes are pretty sweet, with Ino defending Sakura against bullies and trying to encourage her. But then the reason for the relationship breakdown is revealed, and yeah, it's what you expect. They both had a crush on Sasuke. Oh no. And then they're still fighting over Sasuke in the present, during their individual battle, during a moment that all these other characters got cool things that taught us more about them individually, but instead, no, Sakura's just obsessed with Sasuke, because of course, that's what her character boils down to. It's incredibly frustrating to see a character who's part of the main trio getting treated like such an accessory, and it makes the sections of this arc focused on her uninteresting and annoying to me. I could go into this more, but I have a whole video on Sakura planned, and I'd rather not repeat myself too much, so I'll just leave it at that.
So the final verdict. Are the Chunin Exams as great as we remember? Did they live up to the hype that I've so often heard about? And the answer for me? It's a tough one. See, this arc has some absolutely fantastic moments, some peak fiction, baby. But other parts are pretty questionable and anticlimactic. Then there are the themes where I thought that it sometimes did a good job of following through, but other times... Then there were some minor characters who really came into their own, while some of the major players, well, they got a little bit shafted. So for me, no, I wouldn't say that the Chunin Exams were quite great, and they definitely aren't my favorite part of Naruto. However, I still had a really good time with it, albeit a flawed time, so I'm really happy that I took the time to finally read this even as a grown man. Just like how I'm glad that next time I'll get to talk about the Konoha Crush arc and the Search for Tsunade arc. Now, one thing you might be thinking is, Lore, you didn't talk about a whole bunch of this stuff. I wanted to hear more. And that's fair. I did skim over a lot of material because, to be honest, a lot of people have talked about the Chunin Exams. I thought I'd just talk about the things that are most interesting to me. And beyond that, for the sake of keeping this concise, there's certain character details and things like that that I'm leaving for later arcs, like all the stuff with Sasuke that I basically entirely skimmed over. So if you want to see those later videos, remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, all that good stuff. Also, if you're interested in it, remember to check out Scentbird, the sponsor for today's video. Either way, thank you to my patrons, they're wonderful, and thank you to you for watching all the way through to the end. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great